world. No.
There we go. Let's try this again. Hello.
Hello.
There we go. Welcome to Attention Plan episode 3 with me, FG.
And me, Tim the Sorcerer, and
Our very first guest. Yay!
we got it.
We got it eventually. Yeah. For some reason, whenever I switch to this scene, it messes with my Windows audio settings, and it did it again. Chat, a warning to you, we're all going to be louder. There we go.
I'll talk very
Now we're
quietly.
actually the proper volume levels. Because for some reason, whenever I switch to the scenes that you make, Tim, it puts me at 50% in volume on my streaming PC, and I don't know why. But I finally remembered, and that's why
Totally
we're
not
not
me.
super quiet.
Yeah. Not me trying to be in the limelight all the time.
No, it's not even
Intentionally muting all
you,
down.
but yeah. It's just magic. It is just magic. Have you started shared chat yet?
We should be on shared chat with an invite, and we're both in the same call together. Let's have a look on the back end, see if we can merge together with our people.
There we go. And apparently everybody's saying y'all are quiet, so I'm making you louder.
Start sharing.
Ah, perfect. There we go.
Hello.
Perfect. Could you just say something as well, Moo?
Hi, hello, here I am. Am I really loud? Am I quiet?
No, I was really loud in comparison, so I'm just adjusting. Yeah. Yeah, voice meter won't help, but thank you for the suggestion. That's not the actual problem. It's all good. We got it. It's working. We managed.
What would be a stream without tech issues?
Oh gosh,
know,
yeah,
right?
all the time. Exactly.
Part of the job.
Who knew
Yeah.
that trying to do multiple streams back and forth and audio stuff?
The thing is
tricky.
also, when I went to start it, it just didn't set the video feed. I had to regenerate a stream key, put that in, and then it worked. Magic. It's all magic. And we're just going to call it magic. And I tested some of this stuff before, technically. But yeah, I think what this is like, it has nothing to do with the actual content of the podcast, but just stream overlays. I think it's because you make the overlay with your audio setup, and then you send it to me, and I import it, and it just goes all whack. Because we use different audio setups. Sorry, it just kind of breaks.
How are y'all doing today? How are you, Moose? You had a good day?
I'm waking up still, I'm not gonna lie. This is my coffee. Okay, though, yeah, it's not a bad day. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me and having me.
Oh,
Yeah,
y'all
super
doing?
happy to have you.
yeah, no, I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah, I remember when I first got my ADHD diagnosis, I was hanging out in Moo's channel, and then we talked afterwards, and you were so supportive and so kind about it. I was immediately like, yeah, it would be awesome to have her on to talk about this and to talk about a pretty broad spread of subjects today, sort of so we can freestyle it, as people with ADHD are so skilled at doing. But to talk about, well, generally interested to hear about your own path to where you are on Twitch today, and generally content creation, and also to dip into some things around therapy as well alongside that. But there's a lot to say on how the condition is for people who end up in Twitch as viewers and end up on Twitch as streamers, right?
Absolutely. I'm glad that I could be there for support when you got your diagnosis as well, by the way, because I know that definitely means a lot. I've had some online and Twitch friends who were there for me during mine as well. So yeah, I think it's important to let people know that they're not alone with ADHD, especially when they're getting diagnosed and going through the whole everything of feeling during that time. So yeah, I hope it was helpful, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, where should we start? Should I introduce myself and say like the content I stream and
Absolutely,
everything?
yeah.
Please
Tell us
do.
about yourself. What do you stream? How long have you been streaming? How did you get started? All the things.
So I guess the quicker intro is I'm Moohoodle. Hello. I have been streaming for almost 11 years now. I started in May of 2014. I do a bit of variety stuff. I do science communication on outer space and astrobiology. We also talk about sharks, conservation, programming, a whole bunch of random ADHD things also, as well as like actually, talking about ADHD and other things. And I play video games from retro stuff up to newer things, a lot of space games, and kind of do like educational content while I play those games as well. Why did I even start streaming? So Twitch was different back then. I pretty much essentially I thought I was funny and that I would be good at it. Like I wanted to do like a YouTube channel with stuff, and then I learned Twitch was a thing and was like, yeah, okay, I'll just try it out. And here I am today, streaming full time. It's great.
Awesome. How did you? Okay, this is just a personal interest because I've been on Twitch for like since 2012 at this point. Not necessarily streaming. I started in 2013, but how did you find Twitch? That's what I'm interested in. Like, how did you actually find the website? Because back then, nobody knew about it really all that much. So how did you find it?
I have no idea, to be honest. I think it might have been the Twitch Plays Pokemon thing in like 2013 nice. Is maybe how, but maybe I just heard about it anyways through whatever else. I'm not really sure.
Gotcha.
I don't remember.
That's fair.
Lost to the sands of time.
Yeah. That's the fun thing for ADHD with me is memory is a big part.
Yeah, definitely a thing.
Yeah, I didn't realize before I knew I had the condition, I would joke about my superpower of being able to forget what I was thinking or doing while doing it. Like, I don't know if that's something you guys have ever had, where you'll just be like in the kitchen or looking at your computer and your mouse will be moving or your hand will be doing something. You'll pause and be like, what the goddamn hell is going on here? And it kind of makes a little bit more sense now that I know I have the condition.
Literally forgetting what I'm talking about in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah,
I've done that so many times, all the time.
That happens to me all the time as well, and I find it's a little like we're going to be getting vulnerable in this episode here, but I find that happens to me all the time, and it's almost like I've been working on it, but I feel like I almost get a little bit like ashamed on my stream, like it makes it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, or like I'm less knowledgeable on a subject. Like it could be something that, I just know so much about and could do like a TED talk for an hour on, and then it's like gone and I can't like recall specific facts or specific things, and it's always like a little bit embarrassing when it happens, but I've been trying to be more gentle with myself in those moments and be like, it's okay, I can like take a moment to breathe, like try to remember what I was saying, refocus, and I think I've been doing a good job on that recently, so I'm proud of myself, but it's always kind of an awkward moment when that happens, at least for me.
No, I can absolutely relate to that. Haven't noticed as a viewer. Smooth and professional all the time, but I certainly have the same thing. There's kind of like a little scramble that you can do. You have that little flash of, wait, hold on a second, I have a few seconds now to get back on track. Totally hasn't happened on this show while I've been talking to FG before. No, not at all. I'm like a laser. I know everything and don't forget things 5 seconds into talking about them. It's
you
an
like
interesting one, though.
Not call me out, please? Thanks. Okay, continue now.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I was just sort of thinking the same thing with work. We wanted to cover careers in this episode together. And it applies, this is work. And in my case, I also have a corporate job. Do you guys think that perhaps it's a bit different in streaming for you both? But do you think that that's a case of wanting to avoid the association with that condition, or to sort of mask the presence of that forgetfulness in a way? Certainly in my case, it's sort of like an attempt to, I suppose, in a way to mask, right? Interested to hear what that is like for you, Moo.
Hold on, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, sure
My
thing.
ADHD brain already.
We got him. Yeah, I guess I'm sort of saying the subject of masking, right? Of like, if you have that flash of memory, like you forgot something halfway through. For me, I get a sort of a real pull to try and act normal, to sort of try and be a person who might not be considered like forgetful all of the time. So it's a kind of weight when that happens for me.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I've kind of, since getting diagnosed, which I just got diagnosed like 2 years ago or so, I think since then I've kind of labeled it as like this is an ADHD moment, or this is my ADHD. Previously, for what it's worth, I used to, I don't know, get really frazzled and kind of freak out, or I'd be like, oh, dumb brain, or like just like be rude to myself, which I'm very much so trying to not do, because no one should do that to themselves. But I think I feel like I kind of either just label it as ADHD or like, an issue with like the filing cabinet in my brain. I'll be like, okay, hold on, I need a second to like remember this. Especially for people who might not be as like familiar with ADHD and its symptoms. Otherwise, I'll just kind of take a pause and be like, and then go back on track. I've tried to, I don't know, more so embrace my ADHD and just assume that it's maybe not as big of a deal to like others as it is to me. But yeah. Masking is hard though.
Yeah.
Or unmasking, I guess, is hard.
Yeah, I feel like I've personally, when I stream, I feel like not the need to like be like, to try and hide it and overplay it or anything like that, or like do something to like so people don't notice. I just say it. Though I do have to say medication has really helped me personally with that specific aspect, because my thoughts are so much slower, I speak so much slower, so I'm much less likely to forget my train of thoughts, or like skip words and things like that, where you then start stumbling. Because before I was streaming, I did both first nursing, worked as a nurse, and then I went to uni for archaeology, did that. So in those situations, because there were, when I had to like speak in public or like speak on the job, I worked in ICU. So this is like high energy, super critical environment, people like literally like on the knife's edge between life and death. So there was always so much adrenaline that kind of helped with like keeping on track and keeping on task and doing all the things that you needed to do, because it was just like wham bam, like super high stress environment. There is no surprise that after shift every single day I would just absolutely crash, because if you're 8 to 9 hours just completely wired on adrenaline all the time, you just crash. But that would like keep me on my toes there. And then I actually really excel at public speaking because of the same reason. Like if I give like a speech or something, or I had to do like a presentation in uni, because it's such like, it puts me so on the spot that I just go like, all right, let's go, let's do this. And then I like actually do really well at either oral exams or giving presentations, or like, doing like a poster or talk through or anything like that. So I mask it as well, but I mask it very differently. In those situations. On stream, I feel much more relaxed, so I don't really feel the need to to gloss over it or play over it. I just sometimes will just say, all right, chat, you know what? I completely lost track of thoughts. It's the same with when, like, I'm sure you all both experience that as well. When somebody you ask a question, and then half a minute later somebody answers it, and you go like, why are you saying that again? What? And then they're like, you literally just ask about it. I don't know, but yeah, right? Like we don't definitely do that. Okay, so
all the time.
Yeah. Indeed. So I actually have a question, because you said you also just recently got diagnosed about 2 years ago. Same with me. as well. Mine was 2.5 years ago. What type do you actually have? Just to like ask about your specific experiences. Like what is like what type do you have? What do you struggle with the most, you think? And yeah, if you feel comfortable answering that. If not, that's okay as well.
You don't know if they ever gave me like a specific type.
Oh really? Oh, interesting.
Maybe it's different here. I think like inattentive though. That's probably what they more so diagnosed me as. Yeah, I'm definitely not like hyperactive or anything. My ADHD symptoms can be summarized as forgetfulness and overwhelmedness. So yeah, when I guess my entire life until, you know, about like 3 or 4 years ago. And like, you know, I'm in my 30s, so I did the whole like gifted child to struggling adult pathway for this. But yeah, now I'm forgetting what I was saying. But yeah, anyways,
your type of ADHD.
It was a whole thing.
So, yeah. How?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, there it is.
Yeah. No, absolutely, it happens. Yeah. No, yeah. Exactly. It's just like that. Yeah. Here they tend to. I think they do either hyperactive, inattentive, combined, or like primarily inattentive as well. Like, because you can have both. Because I have a little bit of both, but all my hyperactivity is like internal. I have like the racing thoughts and all that sort of stuff, and like struggle to focus with that because like as soon as I'm off meds, my thoughts speed up so much, and I have at least 2 songs playing concurrently at the same time. Like that's how I can tell my meds wear off. I just have music starts playing in my head. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say like the hyperactivity, right? We talked in the last episode about how the name ADHD almost feels like it's something someone external would say. It's like someone observing a child, right? The hyperactivity in particular. And it's funny, you just said the hyperactive part of it is your thoughts. And I was like, oh yeah, right. It's not just like, you know, running around, racing around physically. I have that. So, you know, I think when a lot of people see my show or they meet me and know me, they're like, wow, Tim's chill. But they don't see the thoughts, which can be anything but, right? And for me, I definitely relate to racing thoughts, and I think that sort of hyperactivity mentally is tied to another thing which Moo just said, which is the overwhelm, right? Because I think we've all talked about that separately. FG and I have talked about it before in the show, and the overwhelm for me, maybe it's hard to say like how much the inattentiveness actually impacts my life, because I can't tell because I just forget. But the overwhelm aspect is like super big for me, and I think that's related to hyperactivity. Is that something that you kind of relate to yourself, like the subject of overwhelm? What's that like for you?
I definitely relate to that. Yeah, overwhelm is it's just too much. I feel like before I got diagnosed with ADHD, I kind of got misdiagnosed in a way with like anxiety and whatever else. And I was like, yeah, I'm anxious. I'm super anxious all the time. Everything is so stressful. Why is everything so much? Blah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really nice to get my diagnosis, because I feel like it wasn't anxiety. It was literally just ADHD. Like my anxiety has gotten so much better after my diagnosis, and I would have never expected that. But yeah, the overwhelm for me is just overall like, I guess kind of what I said before, just stress all the time. Like everything is so urgent and immediate. Like every single thing needs to be done right the second, right now. But then also, you know, having executive dysfunction means I can't do all the things even if I want to, and I try. And you know, there's just so many different compounding aspects of ADHD, which y'all have probably talked about before, and we can go into more, but all of that stuff just kind of compounds together and just makes everything feel so daunting. Like even, I know you're talking about this on your stream the other day, Tim, like even like simple tasks like brushing your teeth or doing something like putting a dish in the dishwasher is like too much. And yeah, it can be really difficult. And then, you know, think about just how much effort it takes for someone with ADHD. I know we kind of use like the spoon analogy a lot, like, oh, I don't have enough spoons for this, if you only have like X amount of spoons in a day. You know, just kind of thinking about every single task you have to do in the day and how cognizant you have to be about everything. Like, everything is a thought and a choice. You're not just like walking through life being like, okay, boop, 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 I'm doing the things. It's like, I have to do XYZ. I am doing XYZ. And it's a lot. It takes a lot of like mental power, and it just compounds.
Yeah, for sure. You know,
Yeah.
I kind of want to briefly segue on that to frame a question to you, Moose, because I have just been talking recently on my own show and with FG privately about taking care of myself and realizing that I was at the point of burnout. I was doing too much and I wasn't sleeping enough, and all of my basics of self-care were really slipping. So inconsistently cleaning my home, inconsistently taking care of myself, like showering, brushing teeth, hygiene things. It feels embarrassing to say that, but I'm committed to being honest. All of these things were falling at the wayside because I was at a point where I was doing too much and overwhelmed, but I didn't realize it. And the question I have to you is, do you relate to the idea that a thing that I've sort of just learned from this is that with the ADHD, I'm doing a lot and doing really well in things, but that lifetime of growing up with that insecurity about failure and about being that gifted kid, the lazy kid, sort of blinded me to even the potential, the idea that I could be a person who qualifies to burn out, because I never felt like I was doing enough. Even when I'm doing a full-time job and I'm trying to stream and I'm trying to do all of these things, a podcast, I never even thought. I remember just sitting with my therapist saying, dude, nothing's working. I don't know what's going wrong. Just everything I try is not working to like do all of these different things. And I think that sort of lifetime insecurity with the late diagnosis just made me feel like I was blind to the fact that I was doing too much to the point where I couldn't take care of myself, and I didn't even know I was overwhelmed. And so my question is, like, does that ring any bells for you, or with that sort of subject of doing loads of work and feeling overwhelmed, how that's been in your life?
Yeah. Sorry, I laugh because I'm like, oh, that's too relatable. Like, that is this.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's my coping mechanism kicking in. No, I feel that. I feel that hard. Like, seriously, I've talked to my therapist about it too, because I'm like, look, like, what does a normal person do every day? Like, what does a neurotypical person do every day? And like, am I not doing enough? Am I doing too much? Like, am I doing more than them? Am I not doing enough? And you know, I feel like she doesn't have questions for that. It's like, well, how do you feel? And she's right, because it's like, well, at the end of the day, I can only compare myself to myself, and I know that I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I can't compare myself to a neurotypical person, and that is just not a good way to go about life and do things. Yeah, I feel like I struggle to keep on top of things too. Like, my room is a mess right now. I think I'm good with hygiene stuff, but sometimes like messy room can pile up. Like, my laundry basket of laundry I should have folded over the weekend that I did on like Friday or Thursday is behind my green screen. But it's, you know, I try, and I try to prioritize things also, but it is a struggle. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you worded all of that really, really well, and like really hit the nail on the head. Like, it is a struggle, and even now I feel like, and especially over the past year too, it's like, am I doing enough? Am I not? And last year, I feel like, without sounding cocky, like, I feel like I was crushing it. I was doing a lot of cool things.
You were.
Like,
still are.
I brought, thank you. Like, I brought NASA to TwitchCon on a panel with me, and like organized it and did a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And even then, like, working literally 16-hour days every day with no weekends for like 2 months straight at some point in time, I still was like, I'm not really doing enough. Or like, maybe I'm doing enough, like I'm working like the hours, right? But like, I'm not getting enough done in those hours.
Yep.
maybe because of my ADHD, or maybe I'm just like slower at doing things. And this like brings up stuff that I can actually talk about in college and everything as well. But it's, yeah, no, I feel you there.
Oh, so
Yeah.
hard. And then I wrote this in chat just now, but then like you have these things, you're doing all these things and you do the cool stuff and you can't even feel proud that you did it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's so hard to get to that point where you can actually like say, I did the thing and I'm sorry, because you just don't get that satisfaction. At least I just don't get it. Like I can objectively measure, yeah, okay, this was cool and that's a lot and there is progress and whatnot, but I don't get this like, holy crap, I did it, this is awesome, I'm so cool. I get the, holy crap, I did it, okay, now I'm gonna deflate in my chair, goodbye, I'm gonna just be down here now. I just potato mode. I don't know, it's so hard, like to keep going at that point, like as well with that, to do more things, because it just doesn't feel rewarding in and of itself. Even if it's a cool thing and other people like say, this is really cool, it's just, oh gosh, it's so, like to get that to keep that motivation wheel like rolling and stuff is so, it's so hard, and I still struggle with it. And it's like, I think that's why I go so hard on like external numbers. Not so much when like with streaming. I've luckily like managed to like relax on that quite a bit, but like with my working out and stuff like that, or like I'm really getting like back into like language learning now. So like I look at like external progress and I'm like, okay, I'm going to sign up to that test and I'm going to try and do this and I'm going to try to like accomplish this, and I'm trying to I'm going to go and like this week I'm going to like increase my weights and lift more and do all of that stuff, because like I need that measurement and I need to compare myself to other people just to get a sense of like progression and to realize that what I do is good. I don't know if you can relate to that, but like for me, it's like I rely so hard on like this external factors. It's really hard because intrinsic motivation is just so hard to come by.
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like the sort of emotion I got when you both were just talking about this was NFG was just talking about success, was like the best you get is relief. You know, like you do this amazing thing, you know, like do really well in your careers, you know, or work with NASA, like goddamn NASA, with Twitch, and like, you know, or I just got partnered recently on Twitch myself, and like I just felt relief. I was like, oh cool, like that, didn't screw that one up. You know. And it's like this this standard of success that you expect for everything. You know, it's funny, it's another friend I was just talking to, a good friend, and they were sharing with me about how when you want to do all of these things with ADHD, there's no real sort of filter or prioritizing particularly. It's just like, I want to do this, I want to do this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And you don't really realize that you have chosen 3 people's worth of stuff. And then you're like walking around like, okay, cool. You know, slaps and rubs hands together. Let's try and do all of this stuff at once. And then let's define ourselves as a failure if we don't manage to do, you know, 3 people's worth of work at once. And then at best, let's get some feeling of relief when the thing goes right in one area and just a bit of pressure goes away. And it's just this absolute insanity, right? And I think it speaks to the, not perhaps the most healthy way, but the kind of emotional resilience that you can end up developing in the face of this kind of expectation that you build up over your life, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's that's why, like what you just described, it's like I just want to like go back to that point, because I think that's the important point where we sometimes struggle with doing like the really easy things, because we just can't decide which one is the thing to do at this point, like which is the important thing. And that's why sometimes it's just so hard for us to get started on tasks, even though they might like at least like only take like 2 minutes. But it's so hard to pick, and we always think about it, and we can't turn the whole, okay, I need to do this, and this. We can't turn that off at all, which is why even though maybe we can't at the moment actually work on anything actively, we feel bad about not working on that thing right now, because how dare we be lazy if we have like a to-do list that is so incredibly long. And that's why it's so hard to like take time to relax without feeling guilty. It's like something that I really have to work on, because otherwise I just feel guilty for like trying to relax and recover. I don't know how that is for you, if that like plays a role at all, but for me that's been a big struggle. If anybody wants to chime in.
Yeah, one for you, Moo.
No, I definitely feel that. I had something to add with what Tim said earlier, and I probably should have taken my meds today because I forgot exactly what it was. But for what you were just saying with like, you know, I need to do this, and this, and everything, and like prioritizing, that's something I struggle with so much. For me, I find it's kind of helpful to like go through and just write down everything, like word vomit, write down a list, and then try to take a moment to like kind of prioritize or be like, these are the things I'm going to try to do today. And if it has to go into tomorrow or whatever, okay. Because I have no idea how long things are going to take. Like I should, at this point, know, but I don't know. I have no idea. And that's something that was also brutal for me in college. But yeah, I think just kind of, you know, taking a guess on like, maybe it'll take this long, I'm going to try it out, and just being like gentle with myself, especially with that like time boundary. But I find just getting all of that out of my head helps me not feel as stressed or as like, I need to do all of these things right now. It's like, okay, I'll do like the most important thing. That's all I'm going to focus on. So I think that's helpful. I do struggle to kind of just relax. I think over college I really had to like force myself to relax because it was just go all the time. And so I realized like on those days when, you know, in retrospect, on the days when I think my ADHD was just like too much, or I was just extremely burnt out, which I was like the entirety of college, I kind of learned to like lean into it and just be like, okay, if I'm not going to do anything today, I'm not going to like sit there and feel guilty about it. I'm going to lean into it, and I'm going to try to make it something that is like, you know, refreshing or helpful and relaxing, which is really hard to do. And that took me like years to get to. And even then I still can feel guilty about like relaxing and taking a day. But I know it's better and the better use of my time to lean into it and just not worry about things as much if I can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Absolutely. You go for it, FG.
I really like, I actually just had that really come to a head like last week, because I had this type of focus, or I started going to the gym, so I had this type of focus of just being at the gym, and like I'm just really enjoying it. So I like went super ham on the weekend, and that was just like 7 days of go. So like last Monday I woke up and I had like no energy, so I just had to cancel stream that day because I just couldn't. I was just like depleted. I did not like listen talking about external, you know, measurements, because I would not be able to tell that I'm exhausted or tired or anything like that, or like I need a physical day to like recover. I didn't listen to this at all, and then it just came all to a head on that Monday. And it's still something that I struggle with, even on like medication, because that, as you said it in chat, the medication, and I've noticed this as well, it can make you hyper focus on the wrong things.
Yeah.
So you go down that rabbit hole for like 4 hours, but you're not doing the task that you're supposed to do. But you're just researching something really well, because you're just deep diving down that rabbit hole. So it's it's a work in progress for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only think that that sort of a root of that, at least in my experience, is those expectations. And I expect neurotypical expectations, but I think perhaps related to that, that sort of, for me, sense of panic if I do take time off and do nothing, which I think is a kind of panic that is that it makes sense that it's predicated on this sort of standard that I have learned from the world that I am not going to live up to. And to tie into that, I saw a comment quickly that I want to answer. As a person myself, I stream, but I still have a full-time job in a corporate position, about expectations in the workplace. And then I wanted to ask Moo a question about careers and what led her to Twitch. So for this comment about how do you manage expectations in the workplace if you have not been formally diagnosed, I think there's two parts to that question. One part is that through whatever means available to you, diagnosis is an important thing to pursue, whether you do it publicly or whether you do it through private means. Our own perceptions of our conditions are the things that lead us to end up going for that. So there's sort of an element of self-diagnosis that you almost have to have before you go for it. But in terms of expectations in the workplace, when you're thinking about divulging the potential of having ADHD or the reality of having it if you are diagnosed, for me, I know from a corporate position that it can feel a very fearful thing to do, but that in a larger company, there's a lot more legislation that requires that organization to have diversity and inclusion networks and processes within their HR team. And that can be a thing that can make it a more safe place to consider, disclosing a diagnosis. It can vary in other companies. So I'd say if that person is asking that question, a practical way you can sort of measure up against that fear you might have about talking about it is to sort of think about the kind of company you have. Is it perhaps a smaller one where it's more people-led and it might be a little bit more influenced or determined if it's a good or a bad thing, depending on people in positions of power, managers and so on. But if you're in a larger company, that fear of disclosing will still be there. It was terrifying for me to tell my boss that I had it. I was worried that people would confirm suspicions about me not being good in my team and pulling my weight. But in truth, that sort of size of that company that I'm in meant that it was quite protective, actually, and has been a positive thing. I just saw that and wanted to cover that briefly. But Moo, my question to you, we have in the episode title today about careers. And when we were talking before, you said you had your academic work that you did, your college, and then the path that led you to where you are now. It's a broad question, I suppose, but I'm interested to sort of hear from you how the path you started led you to Twitch. Was it a thing that was something that followed your talents and your interests, or open question really how that sort of beginning college, all of those years of streaming led you to where you are now?
That's a good question. So I feel like initially in college, I was going for a degree in astrophysics, and this is, I think, probably something a lot of people with ADHD can relate to. Because I was going through it, it was going okay, and then, math classes were hard, college was hard. College with undiagnosed ADHD is maybe one of the worst experiences of my life. Like, that burnt me out, and I am still burnt out years later. But eventually I ended up switching my major to computer science, which is what my degree is in now. And I can speak more on like kind of the college experience with ADHD, especially being undiagnosed, and just like how brutal it was, because it was like, we're taking a test and someone sneezes and I just completely lose my train of thought. Or someone's like, and clears their throat, which is fine, but then I completely lose my train of thought or forget what I was doing, or I'm in the middle of writing down an answer and I'm like, wait, okay, what was I doing? And then it's not even like, wait, what am I doing? It takes me like a minute or two to like, regulate myself again to like be focused back in on it or something. And it was a whole thing. But yeah, and even like comparing yourself to like other classmates and where other people are. One of my classes had like a whole graph of like how long it took people to do an assignment. And the teacher was like very strict. This was in computer science at like a pretty full-on like computer science school. But it was like, oh, if you're past the bell curve and you're over here, like you should maybe reconsider what you're doing with your life, and like you need to be better at things. And I was like, Jesus. Okay, so like add that on top of the rest of my life's guilt of like not being good enough, because I've been told that the whole time, like, oh well, if you just applied yourself more, if you just did whatever a bit more. And having that in college, when I'm like, so full of motivation, and I'm like, I'm gonna do the things, I'm gonna change the world, and then like hearing that, it's like, oh, okay, it's like soul shattering. But so yeah, eventually went from astrophysics to computer science. I kind of felt like I was giving up on a lot of my hopes and dreams, but throughout my entirety of doing college, I was streaming on Twitch. And, just for fun. I never expected it to go anywhere. I didn't really try to get partnered until like 4 years into streaming in like 2018 or something. And I just never quite had the stats to do it back then. But yeah, I feel like after college, I just kind of applied to a bunch of jobs, didn't hear anything back. And my stream was going well during all of that. And I just leaned into it and was like, I'm doing it. Like, now's the time, because I love it so much and it's a huge passion of mine. And something I really love about streaming, especially as someone with ADHD, is that it is really creative, and like, you are your own boss, which is, a blessing and a curse. But I can make a whole bunch of silly alerts and stay up until 4 a.m. making myself laugh while I'm like doing funny creative stuff for my stream. And that's awesome. And I can also just very much so be myself and like unmask and do silly things. And I think it makes my stream more entertaining and more engaging than if I, really masked and tried to be like more serious science communicator or whatever else. So there's definitely ups and downs with it all. Hopefully I answered your question enough. Sorry, I feel like I just was like, ooh, here's all the things.
Yeah, no, I think you absolutely did. Yeah. It's the creativity, actually. Can you relate to that as well yourself?
Yeah, to a degree. Like, I feel like I've never been quite the super creative type. For me, I really like streaming because I really like interacting with people. So that's like the really part that I really enjoy. It's like, it's been really easy for me, like even off meds, to have like 3 conversations going on with chat at the same time, and like just navigating all of that, remembering like little things about people, and like, recalling that, and like focus on that. And I just really enjoy the social aspect of it a lot. And I don't get down into that alert rabbit hole that much, but like just like building things for the stream, sometimes I do, but it's been a while. But no, definitely it's just something where it's just really easy to be yourself on stream without having to worry about like repercussions or anything like that too much, as long as you're like within TOS, of course. Yeah, so my experience has been a bit different, but definitely that. What I was wondering from like personal experience, because after I went from I graduated from school, I went to nursing school in Germany, which is not a college thing, it's like a separate thing. It's like an apprenticeship, but you do it for 3 years while already working in the ward, and then I worked in nursing for a year, and then I called it quits because I originally wanted to go into medicine, which was like super hyper focused for me, and I was like super interested. And then I was faced like with the realities of the job, and I just went like, nope. Went to uni for archaeology, was super into it, super hyper focused on it, did all the things, had a super good time. And then my hyper focus switched while I was doing my master's, and like everything just went like Did you have that at all while you were at like at college with your astrophysics? And is that maybe why you think you fell off, or is that more like, have you luckily managed to avoid the directing your career choices after your hyper focus interests? So to speak.
I think thankfully I've always been pretty hyper focused on space. Like astrophysics in and of itself is brutal, and the math, I was like, I'm done with this. But yeah, I mean, that's still a huge passion of mine. Like for me, astrophysics was like a stepping stone into astrobiology, because there's only like 2 colleges in the US that let you major in that. So I didn't really have that option. But yeah, thankfully for me, I was still very much into it, and I was really motivated to still do it. It was just like all of the classes and all of the things, and you know, I failed math classes multiple times, so college took me forever to get through. And on top of that, you know, just having like the burnout and the struggle and everything. But yeah, thankfully I'm still super like hyper focused and really into space and astrobiology specifically. It's a huge passion of mine, and it always will be. But I can understand how it is being like, you know, really into it, and then hyper focus changes and stuff, and it would be really hard for that to happen in college.
Yeah, and then just it like at the end of like because like I was mostly getting along. Like college, like university in Germany is different. Well, it depends. Like it's not quite as like class test oriented as it is in the US. Like where you have a class and at the end you have a test, or like, you know, you have like multiple choice tests throughout, or you have to like hand in homework. It's a lot more open, because you have like lectures where you just attend. Sometimes you don't even have like tests at the end. Like that's when I started. Our lectures were literally just, you only have to attend. You don't even technically have to pay attention. So you have to like make yourself listen. And then like the actual like classes was more like also self-directed learning. And it was all like, okay, pick a topic from this list, research it, make a presentation, and then write like a 20-page paper on it. But the institute I went to was like super relaxed, so they were like, yeah, we're not going to give you a deadline, just hand it in eventually. It's like the worst thing for ADHD. Like you write this 20-page paper, but we don't care if we get it in like a month, 3 months, half a year, or a year. It's the worst. Oh my gosh, it was so hard. And then the same with like bachelor thesis was a lot more compressed, luckily, so I managed to hand that off very quickly. But like my master's degree, because I did one that was actually research based, so it was just me working on like finds and stuff like that with no time frame whatsoever. I just fizzled out. I couldn't do it. I had lost all interest in archaeology. I was frustrated with like, you know, the gender politics of academia, and because archaeology in Germany is very much old white men, and just things like that, and like all of that just compounded and just fizzled out, plus health problems on top, and then it's just like, yeah, no, okay, I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, that is brutal.
Yeah, both of you in your own accounts just then, and myself, I think though, sort of several nodding heads when accountability came up, right? And I have got so much the same thing. Just in a team I'm working in at work, we've like reorganized a little bit to be more flexible and agile, and it's like a little bit more autonomy. And like I'm like, no, wait.
Just tell me when you need this and I'll get it done. Thank you.
Give me a date, please, God. But that's kind of what it is, right? It's the subject of accountability is so critical for us, right? And you know, that can be healthy, unhealthy, but I think the fact remains that we find these ways to it. Like FG, you've done the co-working stuff, that's a thing. Body doubling is a thing. And yeah, I'm at the point certainly where, you know, I've talked with my own community about having like a fitness accountability sort of club where we update with things and share things that we're working on, or just update on in stream about things that we're trying to do, because it sort of like flips a switch, doesn't it, in your head about what to do. And I'm sort of formulating it on the cuff as I think about this, because it's a sort of a new thought, but I'm interested to hear what you two think about that, because I sort of touched on it just as I was saying, like healthy and unhealthy. And I think sometimes that accountability can be a benefit through a bad way, because the fear of the consequence of accountability can motivate you. But I'd like to think that there's a really good, healthy way that you can incorporate that accountability, right? And I'd wonder, perhaps Moo, you first, if you have related to that or found that kind of accountability yourself, something that helps you?
I think that's something I really struggle with, to be honest. I don't have much of like an accountability buddy or anything like that. I can relate in college because I was really good at forming study groups and finding people who wanted to like sit down and do the work. And I think overall that was really good college advice and like help. So I guess in that case, having other people who would just sit down and like study with me, or you know, we would bounce ideas off of and talk about it to learn about things more was really helpful. But when it comes to streaming stuff, like it's kind of just me, and you know, it's like one of those, I know I'm never really alone, but you know, like it's my stream and all of my stuff, and sometimes I'll hit up friends for like little bits and pieces of like accountability things, and I've been trying to be better recently at like reaching out when I, you know, feel like I need help and whatnot. But yeah, I really struggle with it.
It's definitely a learning process. I'm still also learning. I use things like external pressure, external motivators. I try to find internal motivators. That's hard. I talked about with the fitness stuff, I use like external measures to like measure myself and then like work towards that, and that helps me with my accountability. I find for not for general life stuff, but for my fitness stuff, streaks have been like gamification have been like incredibly helpful, which is funny because like normally I hate gamification, like in language learning apps or anything like that. Like holy crap, get it away from me. Like the Duolingo owl or something like that, I absolutely hate it. But for that it somehow works. But then like for like streaming tasks, as you said, like that's the hard thing, right? You're just by yourself, you're just doing this on your own. Like if I had somebody with me that was like working on it, we could like sit down at the same time and do like tasks and like bounce it off of each other. But obviously I don't really have that, so I'm just doing it by myself. So I've shown this before. This is like my weekly notebook, and I just have a weekly to-do task. It gets rolled forward. And I don't, unless I do a co-working stream, which to be fair, I haven't done in a while, I don't have a hard deadline of when I need to like work on it and like get it done. But it is here, I have a note of it, and I will sit down and work on these slowly and just cross them off. And then I add more stuff, and it just never seems to go away and get shorter. But at least I'm cracking away at tasks slowly but surely. I've basically realized that I will never be able to be that person that'll just work away at tasks forever and like not like and like neglect other things. Like I know people that got burnt out because they just had to like sit down and do like just cross off all of the things on their to-do list, like regardless of whether they needed to eat or sleep or whatever like that. Like for me, like the burnout and tasks like that, it doesn't quite work like that. It's more of like the overwhelm that we've talked about, so that you have so much to do that you don't know where to start. So yeah, I very much heavily rely on external factors and external measurements, and like try to get input from other people to like validate that I don't need to work on this right now because I've done X amount of stuff already and whatnot and things like that. And like the way I've talked about this before, and I'm very privileged to be in this position, but the way I've hacked the whole problem with like keeping your house tidy and in a sensible state of hygiene is like I literally hired a person to do it for me. But for them to be able to do their job that I pay them for, I need to keep my house tidy, or at least tidy it up every time before they come. Sorry. That is some sort of like it's a bit of external pressure because it's a stranger. I mean, I've known them for 3 years now, but it's that. So they need to be able to do their job. It needs to be tidy for that. But then at the same time, also having like that relief of, I don't have to do this myself. This is amazing. Like it is so amazing to just work. And then suddenly you like leave your office and the entire house is clean. It's like, yes. And I'm so happy that I'm in that position to be able to do it. And so it's something I prioritize. Like we don't go out to eat or anything like that. So I just spend my money on that instead. So it's hard and it may seem decadent, and like I don't necessarily feel guilty, but like I feel like people might judge me for it. Like, you're 40, you should be able to clean your house yourself. But I'm like, at the same time, it's just like, no, this is the way it works for me, and like I can actually at least get everything sort of, managed, and it's like I can have people come round without me having to panic clean, which is such a win.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the overwhelm, right? The sort of overwhelm angle of it, and I think that's a big part of content creation, right? Because I can sense as well, and I think you guys have both touched on it in your own ways, that it can feel very connected and very lonely at the same time. And I think a kind of thread I want to touch on, and I'm interested to hear what you both think about this, is also the desire for some control. I was just in therapy last week with my therapist, you might be surprised to hear, and we were both talking about avoidance, which is a major root thing that I struggle with like so much. And he was saying, well, at least if you're refusing things, then you control the outcome, right? So like, if you're saying, oh no, I can't do that, I can't do X, Y, and Z, then you're the one making that decision. Whereas if you were to allow the idea of doing all of these things into your life, holy crap, I'm not the one who gets to decide if they work or not, and all of these other things. And that to me sort of comes into this idea of control, and I realize that I have difficulty allowing that for support from other people. And again, I had this just in work where I was talking with a manager of a squad that I'm in, and he was like, okay, yeah, how can I help you out with this thing, and how can we get this good thing going, a big task project I had coming up. And I was like, okay, well, I'll ask you a few questions, and I think I just got to go off and work on that myself and figure it out. And he was sort of jokingly going like this at the screen, going, that's exactly what I mean, Tim. How can I help you with this thing? And I was like, oh, right. That means I ask you for help on stuff? Oh, so I can ask you to use your time to help me do things instead of going off and figuring it all out so I don't bother people. And it's sort of I realized that, and I only just realized that as well in streaming. I was just talking in my community, literally in the last couple of days, about realizing that there's things that I want to do to make it a place that help more people and help them better, and that I can't do it myself, and that there are people who are willing to, I'm incredibly lucky that there are people who are willing to be a part of that and offer that help, and that I need to allow that in. But I think the sort of reality of that, the emotional reality of that for me, it's like a real white knuckle reluctance to give that. And I think it comes from, you know, the feeling like I can't do loads of things. I can't do as much as I want to. And then at least if I'm the one making those things not happen, then that's sort of like a predictable amount of distress that I'm bringing in. I know what it's going to look like and feel like, and it's mine, and I don't have to sort of risk it being bigger if other people are involved. And I think that element of control sort of is a way of me managing that feeling of overwhelm that I live with so much. And I'm interested to hear, Moo, perhaps if that's something that you relate to. That's a pretty heavy thing that I've just said myself. So if anything of that comes out for you, or if it's different for you, feel free.
Yeah, I feel like similar things in my therapy session as well, which can definitely be all over the place and has been recently. But yeah, like I do feel like I kind of struggle with control and want that. And I think he brought up some good points that I haven't really thought about before, that, you know, it probably is in some ways like related to ADHD and everything else. I think my therapist maybe previously or probably would ask, like, you know, do I struggle with asking for help because in the past maybe I didn't get help, or maybe like growing up I wasn't, like, to be fair, I have like EMDR therapy, so it's like trauma based. It's like, let's get real deep in there and go over everything. You know, so I think it would kind of be trying to find like the root cause of, like, besides my ADHD, why do I feel like I can't ask for help? And for me, that would probably because you know, at different times in my life I've really asked for help and I really needed it and I didn't get it. So I think I kind of have like that anxiety of being like, well, if I ask for help, I'm going to be let down again or something. And that's been something that I've, you know, been working through recently as well. Because even the same people can, you know, everyone has different timings or going through different things. And I think it's important to, you know, continue to like ask good friends for help or, you know, make new friends and everything. But yeah, I definitely relate to that. And yeah, I think you put that really, really well. Well said on everything, Tim.
Thank you. Is there anything that comes up for you on that as well, FG?
No, I'm just kind of like thinking about the whole like asking for help thing. I am like, I struggle with that a lot as well. Not so much in like a work environment. Like at work, I'd be okay with asking for help. Like, hey, I've got like for example, like just thinking back to when I was in nursing, I have like this really difficult patient. I still need to do X, Y, Z. Can you do X for me? Just like this routine task and stuff like that. Like that was fine. Like I wasn't really struggling with that too much. It's more of like a personal, like interpersonal relations, where I feel like because of past things that have happened, like putting yourself into a vulnerable spot and asking for help in that regard, like I wouldn't do that. I would just try to like work through it by myself. Like I don't go to therapy yet, probably. But I like white knuckled my, like it's kind of like I white knuckled my way through my ADHD diagnosis by myself, and I did so much trauma related like coping and like working it out, but all by myself. Right? Like that, it's more like that. Like I wouldn't like, you know, like there's so much like that I like, because I like extensively use journaling as like a tool, but that was just for me. It's like just me and my thoughts in my journal and my pen, but rather than like going and getting like input from somebody else, because that is what would put me in a vulnerable position. So I have a bit of a different angle in that regard, I guess. But definitely can totally relate to what you say, Moo, like where it's like there are other things that I play into that affect it as well. It's not necessarily just an ADHD thing for me as well, because it's definitely like having been like let down by people close to me, or like having confided in people and close to me, and then them using that information to get back at you and stuff like that. So right, it's not like this is not an ADHD thing, but it's like, right, we're all people that also have a history and have other things that have happened to us outside of the ADHD that can just make it all so much more convoluted and harder to like pick apart. So yeah, ultimately I should probably also do the whole therapy thing eventually. Just been kind of dragging my feet on it a little bit, but there's definitely more stuff that is there available, because there's like this one particular person in my life that when they just already like have this thing, when I have this tone, it's just like my hackles are raised. So
yeah,
it's like that, right? Like that's the thing. Like, yes, we all have ADHD, but we're all still people with like that have gone through crap that like just goes into it, compounds in it, makes things harder and whatnot like that, right? So I think this is more of a struggle, or this is more of a thing that I struggle with because of other reasons than with my ADHD ultimately.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Tim. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's just I guess, please.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna say I really feel that. For me, I feel like with a bit of that stuff, it's more so the other things, and maybe that's kind of what my therapy is highlighting on. But I think some of the stuff is like, you know, I could ask for help, but it's probably faster if I do it myself, or no one can really help me with it. Like, it's just kind of my own thing, or, you know, my creative things that I'd need to put into OBS. Like, no one can do that for me, kind of. And, you know, maybe body doubling and stuff can help too. But yeah, a lot of the stuff, it's like, no, I know I just gotta knock this out on my own. To get like a little extra vulnerable or whatever, I think some of the stuff that kind of makes it hard for me to ask for help is just like previous relationships in my life. Like, my ex was not great when I would ask for help with things, and maybe this is compounded over time, and even like with my undiagnosed ADHD, but you know, it got to the point where it's like, hey, I have something really serious, like, could you give it a look over? And he was just kind of like irritated or annoyed at the fact that I was like, hey, this is like one thing I'd really appreciate from you this week, and like, the fact that like that's even a thing is just like, ugh. Anyways, but yeah, obviously that's why he's an ex. But that kind of stuff, you know, over time and over different relationships definitely compounds. And so I think therapy's been really helpful for me to work through some of those things, and to know that, you know, I can ask people for help, or that not everyone is like that. And with my EMDR therapy, kind of going through trauma stuff, even if it's been a little more talk-based recently, my therapist thinks that will help with my ADHD. I know, Tim, on your stream the other day, you were talking about how you thought you maybe had like CPTSD, and then kind of learned it was ADHD. I think therapy overall kind of like helps those things, and I guess my EMDR therapy should be helping with maybe some of the like not that there's underlying stuff for ADHD. Like, I've always had it my whole life. Like, looking back, I'm like, yep, okay, I see it for sure. But I think it'll help lessen the symptoms, including like, you know, not getting like really, I don't want to say overreactive. What's the word? Like, when we just kind of instantly like, all the emotions, all the things. I think it'll kind of help me like regulate a little bit more and not have like as strong of a reaction to things. Even like RSD, which is so difficult. Rejection sensitivity dysphoria, if anyone doesn't know. Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I just went on a whole ramble there, but I found it I found it incredibly interesting, though, that, you know, therapy can actually help with ADHD symptoms and managing it. And I think once I work through some of the, you know, stuff in my past, I have found already that it's helping some of my ADHD stuff, especially with like, you know, working through bad relationships and like finding some confidence again. Like, that makes it feel like, you know, as we were talking before, like when we're talking mid-sentence and we forget something, before I used to be like, oh man, I suck, or like, oh, like someone's gonna interrupt me and talk over me. But it's like, no, like, people want to listen to what I have to say. And like, you know, I am allowed to take up space. I am allowed to talk. I am allowed to pause for 5 or 10 seconds and like recollect my thoughts, and like, that's okay. And that has a lot to do with like different pieces of therapy that, you know, I've worked through. So it's been beneficial for me, and I can tell it's been beneficial for you, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helps you to learn sort of the language of yourself, right? Because it's so complicated otherwise. It's like my therapist, I believes that I have complex PTSD, and he is not an ADHD specialist. He's a fantastic therapist. I'm really grateful to have him in my life. And so by comparison, the psychiatrist I was diagnosed at was more on the side of ADHD, not discounting the traumatic things that I've been through, but in, you know, his lens of that. And I think the sort of benefit that you talk about there, Moo, is that you start to learn the language and the words, and you start to get enough of an understanding of yourself that's qualified by someone that you can then compare yourself a bit more clearly against the other things that you hear about, the other conditions you hear about. And then that can direct you to getting more support or more services. And, you know, I think that's the sort of route that it really helps you out with. And for me, the thing that I sort of picked up when you were saying that was the way you talk to yourself, and the way I frame my inner dialogue more recently. Sounds quite similar to what you're saying, in that I've taken to sort of thinking about it more in the sense of parenting a child, in that I understand my ADHD to be very impulsive and strong-willed, and the rejection element in there might be because of PTSD as well. It might not be. It might be ADHD, RSD, the incredible sensitivity to rejection that is so common for ADHD people. But it's that sort of way you talk to yourself, right? If I'm parenting a child that I love and really care for, I don't shout at it when it does something I don't want it to do. I don't say that I hate it. And, you know, would you, if you had a child and, you know, it did something, not knowing it was bad, you know, would you tell that child that it's not worth anything? Like, God, no. You know, we can immediately be like, no. You try and be gentle with it. And therapy has helped me to sort of reframe the aspects of ADHD that I have, and sort of view it in a childish kind of way, or a childlike kind of way. That it's really strong and impulsive, but perhaps doesn't know the best thing. And then that gives me a sort of a way to lovingly say, well, okay, no, you want to do this, you want to eat more. No, we're not going to do that because that's not the best thing for us now, but to do it in a compassionate way. That's been very helpful for me. But I wanted to ask you yourself, Moo. You mentioned EMDR, and for the benefit of people in the chat who don't know what that is, would you be able to give a brief explanation of how it works, and then perhaps speak on how you think it's helped the ADHD stuff specifically?
Yeah, let me Google quickly EMDR. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So yeah, it is like trauma-based therapy where you kind of go through and like relive moments. So it's really heavy and it's a lot to go through, and it brings up things again. But essentially the rapid eye movement stuff, so it's kind of like going back, talking about things, putting yourself in the moment, seeing how you feel, and then kind of taking an object or fingers and just kind of like following it like back and forth. It's not like hypnotization or something like that. But the rapid eye movement helps your brain process things quicker, similar to like, if you go on a walk, you're able to process stuff a bit better. And, then you kind of talk about like what comes up in those moments, even if it's something completely random or if it's like, something really heavy or whatever. So like, for example, I went through this with like a previous abusive relationship, and talking about that before was like, ooh, yeah, this is like a 7. Like, I'm stressed out. My gut doesn't feel okay. Like, I'm not doing okay talking about this kind of a thing. After like one session of doing that, it was like, okay, yeah, I feel like a 4 or a 3. Like, wow. It's not as like it's not as stressful. Just kind of going through and talking about things or doing whatever. In a way, it's kind of, this sounds kind of weird. Maybe it's not quite accurate, but for me, it's almost kind of like reliving or putting myself back in like these moments and like processing them or like making them like my own, of like, you know, just I don't know, like standing up for yourself or doing whatever things. So it's been really helpful. And yeah, I think with my ADHD, it's been beneficial because overall, at least for the stuff that I've worked through, I think it's helped me be able to like embrace more of who I am and like not really mask my symptoms as much, as well as like being able to kind of just manage it overall better, or like not immediately get as overwhelmed with specific things. It kind of overall has helped me be able to take a pause before like just panic and everything and RSD and all of this. And that said, I still get all of those, right? But it's like not intentionally working through it in therapy. It's just been like a nice, like beneficial side thing, that stuff isn't quite as heavy. And I think that's kind of what EMDR is about overall. It's like the stuff isn't as heavy or as like reactive. So that's been nice for me. And apparently there is some like evidence for it being able to help with ADHD. I don't know exactly how conclusive that is. I can report back in a while once I go through more. But it's been helpful just for me as a person, regardless of ADHD or not.
Yeah,
So
it sounds like, but what comes to mind when I hear that is you're putting yourself in a position again to process really extreme emotional moments, right? And what do we know that RSD is like? It's like a tendency to have these really strong emotional extreme reactions, right? So it makes a lot of sense actually that it would have at least a sort of side benefit. I wonder, FG, when you have strong emotional reactions to things for any reason you might sort of relate to ADHD, how you've learned to manage that yourself?
It's an ongoing process. Certain ones are easier to manage than others for sure, because I find if I can actually realize why at the moment I'm like experiencing the RSD or like the irritability, then I actually find it quite easy to work through it, because I'm like, oh, I'm experiencing this because X person is doing that, but they're just doing it. They're actually, for example, doing something where they're trying to help or something like that. So they're actually trying to do a nice thing, and that makes it really easy to let go of it. But I sometimes get it where I have this disconnect, where I can't figure out why I'm necessarily feeling the way I'm feeling. And then it's really hard to process like the associated emotions and like in a healthy way, and not just use like bad coping mechanisms. But those moments are getting a lot more far and further in between. And I definitely also have to say that I can't yet say whether or not medication helps with that, because I haven't had an extreme reaction like that on medication. Or maybe I have, but like, or maybe I've been in a situation where I would have had one, but I didn't have it because I don't know, I was just in a more relaxed state, in a more focused state, more open state to like communicate and interact with new people. Or maybe I just listened more to myself, because maybe like what happened last week, I was streaming on Friday, kind of just started not feeling the game anymore, kind of just, you know, I had a case of the Fridays, and instead of like ruminating on that and pushing through that, I just ended stream early. And just maybe that was a way of dealing with it in a healthy way, where it didn't even escalate to that point, but I didn't even realize that it got to that point. You know, that I was like approaching that point. Like, so yeah, maybe that's just why, and maybe the fact that I haven't had it in the last 8 weeks just does mean that medication has also like just leveled that out a little bit, which actually would be quite nice, because this whole RSD thing is just really like, yeah, not fun, because like it's really hard to work through it. Like for me, it depends a little bit on where the source of the RSD is, because there is, once again, this one person in my life where they don't even need to mean it, but they can just poke that thing where it's just like, oh, you know, but even that has actually technically happened and it was fine. So yeah, maybe it's just getting better slowly, but it definitely is a work. And I get like this little proud moment when I realize that it's happening, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling like this, but they don't mean it like this, but I'm feeling like this because it's currently like just like I'm just overwhelmed. There's no need to be angry right now. You're just overwhelmed. You just need to step away for a moment and then collect yourself. I don't know, it's like realizing a little bit how your own brain works. I think you can probably both relate to that. We're still on that journey. There are things that I learn even now, 2.5 years into diagnosis, where I'm just like, oh, this is how I process things, and this is how I deal with it. And yeah, it's definitely, it's still a journey, and I think it's gonna be ongoing for many, many, many years. And somebody brought this up in chat earlier, where they're like, all right, I feel at my age I should be much more resilient, and like I should have figured these things out. And I'm like, no, it's a process. We're all learning. Nobody in their 20s or 30s has their life figured out. Everybody is hecking just you know, winging it all the time. Yeah, this whole mental health journey, like in your 40s, that so many people are like experiencing right now, this is a good thing, because we're all realizing, hey, maybe trying to pretend that everything's all right is not actually a good thing, and like seeking help and talking about mental health and making it, you know, destigmatizing it is a good thing. So just wanted to put that out there, because yeah, right. It's a journey, and it's going to be a journey that's going to be ongoing for a little bit longer, I reckon.
I think when you move, you first.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I think life is always like a continuous lesson of like, you know, kind of learning and processing and doing all of that. I don't know if that ever really ends, but maybe that depends on the person, you know. I think it's like you were saying, it's a great thing when people, you know, are like a bit older and know that, you know, you still have time to like sort things out or to process things. Like you don't have to do all that in your 20s or whatever. Like, you know, people in their 60s are even doing that, and I think that's fantastic. I wanted to mention that I think it's so great that you've been like, you know, kind of noticing that how your brain works a bit more, and like taking the pause and like realizing how you process things, because that's something I've kind of gone through and experienced as well, to some degree, and obviously still am. And it feels really nice to kind of like know and be cognizant about it. And I think that's a big step, at least for me, with like kind of healing and processing and like working through the motions of ADHD and like how I go about it. I did also want to say that I have found my medication to super help with like overstimulation and like those reactions and everything. Like it just like brings me down to a level, it makes me feel more like myself in a weird way, because it just brings me down to like that level of like, I'm not like, oh, the shirt is annoying and oh, all these other things. It's like the lighting's too much, like all the sensory issues are less. And so I feel like it makes me a little less reactive, which might sound weird to people who don't understand ADHD or don't understand those things. But it's like, there's a lot of random overstimulation that can go on. And like, I'm not even aware that it's happening sometimes until I get like grouchy or something. And on my meds, I feel like that doesn't happen, or I'm able to kind of like process those moments and stuff better. So I just wanted to mention that as well. 'Cause yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. So hard. And like, I relate so hard. I'll just put this real quick out there and then you go, Tim. The whole not being aware of it, it's like why you're getting upset and stuff like that. Oh, it's so hard. Like up until I got this, I didn't realize certain situations were so stressful for me. Like until my watch started beeping at me, like, you're really stressed right now. Do you want to like relax maybe? It's like if before that you would have asked me like how am I doing, I would have said I'm doing fine. It's so weird how I'm like so removed from like my body input, and how much meds have actually helped with that so much, with the whole body mind connection feedback thing. It's wild. So I guess it makes sense that it would also then regulate it like you said. But yeah, please go ahead, Tim. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, no worries. You want to talk? I mean, I was going to say exactly the same thing. It's so interesting, this contrast that we have of being people who have emotions and reactions that we experience so intensely, and then having no idea what they are. You know, like we can have all of this incredible like rejection reaction, or like anger or fear, and just at least in my case, have this like complete lack of awareness of like the language to put words to it. And you know, like getting into 30s, and I think I can start to figure out when I'm pissed off at someone on a good day, but like for most of my life it was just this sort of like generalized haze of angst and stress and stuff. And it took so long and so much work to start to get to the point where I could be like, oh, maybe it's that thing, or oh, maybe it's this thing. And like when I sort of like explain that back to my therapist, like not to trivialize or diminish the things that I have learned to do, but it's shown me just how much I can have these incredibly intense feelings and this incredible sensitivity, and then just really struggle to tell from which of one of several things it is, what might have caused it, what I'm actually feeling. Maybe I'll feel it just later on, you know, and get that sort of shower realization that that's what it was. And like those two things against each other, right? The extreme of the emotion and the intensity, and the confusion about putting a name to it, right? That's at least the thing that I've had. I don't know if you two relate to it.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like I've brought this up before, so I was going to quickly repeat it. Like during COVID, like I was streaming already, full-time content creation, and like stream was going like really well because everybody was stuck at home, and like I was in this really good position from the outside. And if people were asking me like, how are you doing, I would say at the time, I'm doing amazing, I'm doing great. And like in retrospect now, I'm like, no, you really weren't. Like you were using so many unhealthy coping strategies, like to just go through the general state, like to cope, not with like what was going on personally, but just to go on, like to cope with the general state of the world during that time, like 5 years ago. It's like, but I was not aware of it at the time. Like I was 100% so not aware. Like it's wild how disconnected we can be from these things. God, it's just
yeah. That can definitely be challenging, and I totally get it. Coping mechanisms and strategies are one thing I've been working on, and also something that like therapy has helped me with a little bit, because I thought I had great coping mechanisms until my therapist called me out on them and were like, you know, for example, no wonder you feel like you can never finish a task and you feel awful about it, because your coping mechanism was doing whatever you were interested in, which was like a fourth of like 10 different tasks instead of just doing one task and finishing it. And I was like, ugh. But she's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, a whole bunch of other things. And yeah, I definitely feel that.
Definitely.
Also just piling on that RSD is the absolute worst. That was kind of funny story, I guess, but that was the one thing that I thought I did not have with ADHD. I was like, yeah, I relate to a lot of this stuff, you know, that I've seen in memes and videos and blah, 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 but not RSD. I don't have that at all. And y'all, I mean, it took me like months and months into my diagnosis to finally be like, oh, I have RSD. And then it took me longer to be like, oh, I really have RSD. Like, oh, I have it bad.
Yep.
So I thought that was interesting, and that was a big realization, because it was like, oh, I thought everyone just had these reactions to things, or like, oh, you know, that's just how it is. Obviously, I'm like upset that my friends didn't invite me when they all went and hung out and did a thing or something, right? But then it's like, people don't react to this extent, and you don't know, because this is your own lived experience. You don't know how other people feel explicitly about certain things. So it's like, once you kind of learn that and connect the dots, it's like, oh, like I'm living life on hard mode in a lot of ways, and, you know, shouldn't compare myself to other people. And yeah, RSD is the absolute worst.
Yeah, it's really intense. And I only recently, I can't recall it on the spot, but I only recently realized that I had one thing that I was really scared of and had this strong reaction to. I can't pin it, but I realized that it was an underlying fear of rejection in that thing, and I was like so sure that it was a completely different thing entirely. And then I sort of picked at it a bit more, and I was like, wait, crap, the thing I'm actually scared of there is someone rejecting. I think it was something I was doing or something I was offering to someone, and I was sort of like projecting onto that person about how it was them and stuff. And then I was like, wait a second, Tim, you're scared about what they think about the thing that you did, and you know, whether it would be accepted or rejected. And I was like, oh, you mother, like it's like you know, when they're in wrestling or in like Scooby-Doo, they rip the mask off and it's got like rejection underneath, and you're like, oh, you again, god damn it. It's so dominant, right? It's so strong, the extent of it.
That just reminds me of like last episode, when was it? I think it was at the last episode where we both said at when we both said at the same time, like, oh, we both were thinking basically that we were not doing enough for the podcast, and we were both feeling like super guilty, and like that the other person was like judging us.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like so it's like exactly that, right? But like obviously it was completely fine, but it's exactly like that. Exactly. It's sorry.
Yeah, we were both thinking that the other person, you know, had done way more. So you said, you're like, oh, I thought you were doing more. I was like, well, I thought you were doing more.
Yeah.
Turns out we were just both feeling bad silently.
Yeah, for nothing, really, in the end.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
What a journey.
Yep.
With ADHD, I think we're really bad at making ourselves feel guilty, and really bad for no reason with not much evidence.
Oh yeah,
it's a struggle.
Oh yeah, and then it just kind of compounds, and it keeps rolling, and like you just feel like you never can get ahead of it, and then you feel guilty about that, and then it's just, oh god, there's so much that just gets into that, and then it gets into your brain, and then you start ruminating about it like at night, because you know that's when like you're trying to sleep but your brain is not wanting to sleep and stuff like that. It's just, there's just so many different facets that like come together that all like play into this entire thing as well. Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's it brought my mind back to the EMDR stuff you were talking about, Moo, because you were saying how you, or at times in it, I've not done it myself, would revisit those things that it induced and then repeat them as, you know, perhaps the person you are now, or repeat them with an outcome that you felt was better, or, you know, better for you. And that seems to be sort of like the process of going through bringing those up in a way that, you know, you can handle and is safe, and then reframing them a little bit, right? Like as a more perhaps now capable person, you know, not that you were anything less, of course. I want to be careful about using my language at the time, but I'm sure you can understand the point that I'm trying to make with it. And I think that's sort of a process we go through perhaps unknowingly in life, where we start to just build up these series of evidence where we're like, no, wait, that old sort of like record playing over and over again was like a snapshot of a different time, and now there's more evidence that I can be in a similar situation and I can handle it. You know, it might be really horrible still, but I'll live and I'll get through it, and I might even be able to respond instead of reacting, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's
No, absolutely.
It's a lot of work to get to that point. And I think because you said there's not been too much evidence about EMDR like helping with ADHD, but I can just not having or like having moved through and dealt with like traumatic experiences, I think is just, I think it is just going to be helpful regardless, because you have less stuff to ruminate on and less stuff to like get like anxiety about the past, right? I don't know like how often that happens for you, but I go through like in my brain like these embarrassing moments from like in our elementary school, and it's like how why do I even think about this still? Like, why is this a problem? Like, the people that were involved in it, they've long forgotten about it. But like for you, it's still a sense of like either shame or embarrassment or guilt and stuff like that, and it's like it's really hard to let go of that. But I think it could probably help with that a lot. So it would make sense that it makes like certain aspects of the ADHD of ADHD symptoms just a lot less or easier to manage at least.
Yeah, no, you totally nailed it. I think it does kind of like clear the air or like clear your mental capacity for lack of a better word here. So you are able to focus on other things. So it doesn't bring that stuff up. It doesn't bring the emotions up. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, that was like a past experience and like this is reminding me of it or whatever. But yeah, it definitely makes everything a lot lighter and does kind of make it where that stuff doesn't pop up as much. And some of those things, I think everyone has stuff that, you know, they could work through in therapy. But I think some of those things kind of pop up more frequently than we might notice. So, you know, doing EMDR for me has made those things less, where I can just go about my day and not kind of have like these little triggers, I guess, in a way, or other just little bits and pieces that pop up, and it's like I can just more so focus on my other stuff and like better emotions and feelings and whatever. Not that I was struggling with, you know, like awful emotions and feelings all the time, but it's definitely been helpful.
Is that a thing for you? Again, I say it for my own interest as well, because I brushed up against the phrase EMDR and when I was looking into things, and for people in the chat as well. Is that a thing that sort of you do for a set of sessions, or is it like more intermittent alongside therapy? Like, how's that worked out for you?
It might depend on your therapist. For me, like, she's definitely an EMDR therapist, but we've done a lot of talk therapy stuff too. But I guess to know what to do EMDR on, you kind of have to talk about it and like figure out exactly what to do. And it is definitely a lot of talking, and like you want to make sure that you're like able to do EMDR on that day, or like you feel okay to like process that and like go through it essentially as well. But yeah, a lot of it has been like talking through just everything, like childhood until now, of like, you know, let's make your little trauma roadmap to work through. And it sounds kind of weird, but like, you know, it involves, as she put it, a lot of like nosy questions of you know, like trying to figure out things. And I think she mentioned, as we kind of work through that entire roadmap, you know, it'll kind of get easier as we go, because we're working through just like a lot of compounded stuff. That said, like before I really started therapy, I didn't think it was something I like super duper needed. Like, I know I needed it for some specific things, like that awful relationship, which, you know, we were able to work through. But even then, like, I was handling it okay, and it wasn't like the worst. But I'm definitely much better off after having like gone to therapy and done EMDR around it. But yeah, it's.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah,
it's funny. I can relate to what you said. No, it does. I just thought it's a funny thing. I sort of thought about how I remember my early therapy sessions, and prompted off what you said is like I remember the email I sent to the to the guy who I've now been seeing for a couple of years, and like the understanding of the problem. You know, I was like, "Hello, Mr. Therapist, man. I have this, and this, and we're gonna talk about it." And he was like, "Cool, come on in." And then, like, you know, a couple of years later, I was like, "And now for something completely different." Like, turns out your own understanding early on can be understandably different from what it ends up being. Hey, it's a good journey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
really glad we had
absolutely.
this conversation, guys. It's absolutely wonderful. Thank you both for sharing.
Yeah,
I
it's
really
been really
appreciate
good.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
It
you.
has been really lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. Shall we close off by saying, Moo, you mentioned you do science communication, talk about interesting shark facts and space things and video games. Is there anything particular in your schedule that you're looking forward to in the weeks ahead?
Not really. Not that I can remember or think of. I think just our usual science communication stuff, a bit more games. Been playing through Hypnospace Outlaw, which has been really fun. And there's been a lot of really cool space news and stuff happening as well. So we like to watch rocket launches and see what all is happening. Yeah. Can I do like one last little piece of like advice or whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, do it.
I guess I just want to let everyone know that I think especially with ADHD, like embracing yourself and embracing who you are and embracing your symptoms, I think can be really beneficial. So that's probably like the one last little closing piece of advice that I'd leave is like, there's nothing wrong with you with ADHD. I think for me, you know, I think we all talked about this, how we can be really hard on ourselves. For me, I kind of remind myself that like I literally have a disability, and that's not in like a bad way or an excuse. It's like, I am going through things differently, you know. It's going to take me a little bit longer. It's going to do this, like, and kind of how you were saying about, you know, like treating yourself or that part of you as like a child or something where you're not going to talk down to it. I think for me, it's like having that, you know, compassion and everything and being like, you know, it's going to take you a little bit longer and that's okay. Like, you know, we can pick it up tomorrow, or we can do this, and just being gentle, being kind, especially to yourself, I think is really important.
Well said.
Yep, well said. I just don't have anything to add to that. Thank you so much for joining us. It was absolutely wonderful to have you on. I have one more question though. When are you going to be live next so people can tune in?
Tonight. I was like, wait, what day is it? Monday? Yeah, tonight at 7 p.m. Mountain Time.
All right.
Yeah, 6 p.m. West Coast, California, U.S. time.
Wonderful. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Hypnospace
stream Monday, Wednesdays,
Outlaw
and Fridays.
It's such a good game.
It's so fun.
It's really good, yeah. And we will be back in 2 weeks' time for the next episode. And yeah, thank you again so much for joining us. Thanks for being here as well, Tim, of course, my wonderful co-host. Thank you for being here, chat, and your wonderful inputs. And we're gonna leave you in the capable hands of, well, not this person, but we're gonna be writing somebody else. Thank you for coming over though. We are just about to end, but thanks for coming over. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you on the Attention Pen podcast in two weeks' time. Until then, have a good one, everybody. And I will see you tomorrow. Tim, you're live tomorrow too?
I will be on next. Checks what day it is on calendar. Wednesday for Satisfactory.
Perfect.
And hopefully painting soon again. Miniature
Lovely.
painting back on the show.
Wonderful. We will see you all then. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Take care, folks. Thanks for the raid, Flanker and Co. Bye.